Our Judge Gene Thibodeaux next on the Delphin Law Info Show.
You are now tuned into the Delphin Law Info Show, hosted by attorneys from the Delphin Personal Injury Firm in Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is the show where your issues are their concerns.
Hello, everyone. I'm attorney Mark Delphin with the Delphin Personal Injury Law Firm headquartered in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My co-host today is attorney Ezra Pettis Jr., who is a member of the Delphin Law Firm. Our very special guest today is the Honorable Retired Judge Ulysses Gene Thibodeaux. Judge Thibodeaux, welcome to the Delphin Law Info Show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ezra. I'm looking forward to a fruitful conversation with you all. It's been feel honored that you've asked me to be on your show, and I also feel especially grateful that you said I'm a retired judge as opposed to a former judge. I'm still a judge with all the authorities that other judges have with the Supreme Court would appoint me to any case. A former judge connotes that you're no longer a judge and that you've been removed from the bench.
All right. Well, we got the distinction. Well, Judge.
Well, that's good, Judge, because I did not know.
Judge, you recently retired as Chief Judge of the Third Circuit Court of Appeal, where you were over there for over 32 years. You have a solid record of being a long-time community servant, and your accomplishments are just absolutely outstanding. Some of those accomplishments, Judge, that I want our audience to know about, it includes bringing a charter schools to Southwest Louisiana, which increased first-rate educational opportunity to many children. You also helped bring Bayou Comprehensive Health Center to Lake Charles, which is now Southwest Louisiana Center for Health Services, which literally has made a difference in the lives of many, many tens of thousands of folks who otherwise might not have been able to get health care. And that's not to mention your outstanding career in law and on the bench, where you have established a legacy of first-rate excellence and, most importantly, of never forgetting where you come from. So, Judge, we're extremely happy to announce that you also have become a member of the Delphin Law Firm.
And I'm honored to be a member of the law firm. You all have a solid, great reputation. You have a yeoman's feel for the law, and you've demonstrated that over the years.
Judge, your scholarship and your excellence is just going to make us better and better. So we want to talk about some of your memorable cases in a moment, Judge, so that our audience can get a better flavor of everything that you've been doing with your life over the past 50 years. But now that you're working with us, what sort of cases are you interested in handling?
Mark, I'll be honest, just as your firm handles exclusively personal injury cases, that's my area of interest at this point. I get a lot of phone calls, Mark and Ezra, on potential cases in the family law area, real estate area, criminal law area. I can do those, but I choose not to because I want to focus exclusively on having some compensation be brought to those folks who have been injured as a result of someone else's negligence. And on the court, I tried to advance the law so that we would be at least on a parity with other states. When I was on the court, we were 40. Louisiana was 40th in the nation with respect to personal injury verdicts, and hopefully since that time we've advanced perhaps in the 20s. But that's my area of interest now, personal injury law. With the exception of workers' comp. Workers' comp has become really an area of specialty. I know your firm does not do that, and I choose not to do that as well. So I'm focusing on pretty much accidents, whether it's truck accident, car accident, motorcycle accident, slip and fall, those types of fields where a person is actually injured through no fault of their own.
And Judge,
go ahead, please, Ezra.
oh, sorry about that, Mark. Yeah, and we are of the same school of thought, of course. And I think that's why, this relationship, works so well because, the more time we dedicate to those who have been injured and, like you said, through no fault of their own, the sharper our skills become and we're able to dedicate more of our time to that. That's not to say that we don't want to help people who have other issues. It's just sometimes that, it may be best for us to refer them to someone who does that area of law every day in, day out.
That is correct, Ezra. And, we've got a bunch of young lawyers in Lake Charles now, and perhaps delving into the family law area, the criminal law area, the real estate area, and general practice of law would assist them, those who are just beginning, those who have come out of law school and don't have that much experience, but they need that type of exposure to develop their practices. I did it when I was a young lawyer. Mark did it when he was a young lawyer. I remember that, and you've done it. So it's a good foundational basis for young lawyers to participate in. It allows them to develop that practice, and it allows them to have more visibility in the community. So I think that by focusing on personal injury law and having the other cases in the other areas of law formed out to young lawyers is a benefit to both sides, quite frankly.
Judge, I always tell people that if you got a legal question, even if we can't take your case, whether it's a personal injury case or not, call us and we'll help direct you. We're not going to turn our backs on anyone. If you're in need, even if it's a criminal case or a domestic case, call us and we're going to get you to somebody that can help you. Although we are going to limit our practice to handling serious injury cases.
That is correct. As a law firm, Mark and Ezra, you all know that we're a sounding board for others. People will approach us in churches, they'll approach us in grocery stores, they'll approach us in the public to ask specific questions. And sometimes the law and the process can be very confusing. Not to us because we've been in it for so long, but for the average citizen, sometimes it's perplexing, and we help to guide them through that process.
Well, Judge, I've been in Lake Charles for 42 years. I'm not going to say how long you've been here, although you were here 7 years before I. but let me just mention this to you. One of the memorable cases that you had that I'd like you to talk about just a little bit, that when I got here in 1982, I learned about, and that was the case over at Citgo. You and a lawyer by the name of Charlie Cotton from New Orleans had done some work helping Citgo residents. Just kind of refresh the community's recollection about what y'all did, what that case was about.
This was Fisher versus City Service, which is now Citgo. I began to work on that case as an Earl Warren intern with the Legal Defense Fund, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in New York City. So I was helping Charlie Cotton, who's now deceased, with the discovery in that case, and William Tett with the Tett law firm here in Lake Charles was defending it. We ultimately met in Denver, struck an agreement for over $4 million for those employees at city service who had been denied promotions in the craft areas, the carpenters, the boilermakers, the pipe fitters, the instrumentation folks. If you were black at that time, you were automatically placed into the labor field. And if you were promoted, if you had the opportunity to be promoted to one of the craft fields, you were at the bottom of the list in seniority. So you were subject to LIFO, L-I-F-O, last in, first out. And so we did not have a presence in those higher paying jobs. As a result of that settlement with City Service, which was $4 million, that was the highest Title VII settlement in the country at that time. This was 1978. But the impact of that case went beyond the employees who were at Citgo or City Service. Because of our success with that one entity, the other entities in the petrochemical industry in our area fell into place because they did not want to feel the wrath of the law. At that time, Title VII, which is fair employment law, was a growing field, a growing area that not many attorneys were involved in. And when the petrochemical and when the industrial plants saw the success that we had at city service, as I said, they fell in line. We filed suit against PPG, we filed suit against Conoco and several other facilities. All of those actually were settled so that Black workers in this community had the opportunity to be hired into the various craft positions. We also sued the unions who were complicit with the various industrial plants because of that.
And so, Judge, your record of making differences in the lives of hundreds and thousands of people did not end there. And I don't want to continue to blow your horn, and I do want to talk about injury cases, but I got to get you to share in our community the story of Clark versus Edwards, which is one of the most significant landmark cases ever to affect Louisiana. Could you take a moment and share at our community the significance of Clark versus Edwards?
Clark versus Edwards was a case filed in the Middle District of Louisiana, Baton Rouge, before Judge John Parker. It challenged the method by which judges were elected in Louisiana. Judges at that time were elected at large. And because of the racially divided vote, a Black attorney had very little success in getting elected to the bench. We argued that the judiciary should be elected in the same manner as a city council race, a police jury race, a school board race, where there are districts that are carved out. We were successful in convincing Judge Parker, the federal judge, that judicial elections should be brought in the same manner. This was highly contested. We went to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, which said that the election of judges was subject to Section 2 and Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. This suit was filed in the late 80s and settled not settled, we actually had a judicial ruling that the method by which Louisiana elected judges was unconstitutional. Because of that ruling, the legislature in 1991, 1992 carved out sub-districts where we had majority-minority districts, which gave the voters an equal chance to elect candidates of their own. Let me give you the impact of that. In 1988, there were 6 Black judges in Louisiana, 6. 4 in the New Orleans area, which had a substantial Black population, and only 2 outside of New Orleans. That was Freddie Pitcher on the Baton Rouge City Court and Carl Stewart on the district bench in Shreveport. Judge Stewart later became the chief judge of the Federal Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal. Because of Clark v. Edwards, Louisiana now has 92 elected Black judges, which makes Louisiana the state with the highest number of Black judges on a per capita basis.
And Judge, let me say, there again, that work on your behalf affected literally hundreds of thousands of Louisiana residents. But your commitment to home, as some lawyers advertise, did not end there. Take a moment, because we want to talk about injury cases, but I need you to share with the audience what inspired you to help bring Bayou Comprehensive to Lake Charles, which literally has saved thousands and thousands of lives.
Mark, if you're not healthy, it's very difficult to succeed in other areas. That was
That's
only
true.
in the late 70s. There was only one Black doctor practicing in North Lake Charles, Dr. Martin, who is now deceased. Because of that paucity of medical care and the paucity of the delivering of medical care in the Black community, Milton Bellard, one of my high school classmates, called me while I was in New York with the Legal Defense Fund to find some method by which this access to health care could be overcome. I researched it. I found Section 330 of the Public Health Service Act, which gave funds or the establishment of a federally qualified health center, FQHC. We started with $10,000. We ran out of money. The board borrowed $25,000 to keep the facility going. And we began on Appaloosa Street. That's Shattuck Street. Moved to Appaloosa Street. We started with 2 doctors, 1 nurse, and 1 receptionist. We have now, since that time, since 1981, advanced to having 25 medical practitioners, and serving an area of Calcasieu, Allen, Lafayette, and Jeff Davis parishes. And the total client base is now probably around 25,000 patients at these facilities. So it was bringing medical care to the community.
And Judge, your commitment to home, your commitment to Southwest Louisiana did not stop there. You were just getting started. Tell us about the charter schools real quick.
Okay. You should not be limited in your school choice to a zip code. Parents should have the opportunity, and students should have the opportunity to choose which school they're going to go to. When Clyde Mitchell and Charles Honoré and I researched it, we found that in 2010, there were 53 schools in Calcasieu Parish. There were 16 schools that were underperforming or failing. Every last school of those schools had a Black population of 85% or more, okay? And so these kids, the problem was not the kids, the problem was the system through which they were educated. And so how do we overcome this? How do we overcome this systemic underserving of educational opportunities in the Black community? The answer was charter schools. If I were growing up today where I grew up as a youngster in Lake Charles, I would have been gone in 2010 to an elementary school that was an F school. I would then go to a middle school that was a D school. My high school that I would have had to attend was a F school. I didn't have a choice. My parents could not afford to send me to parochial school or private school, and I could not transfer out of my district. So I was hemmed in. I was hemmed in by my zip code. The charter schools offer an alternative to that. We're still part of the public education system. We supplement the existing public education system. We believe in the public education system, but the dollars have to follow the students wherever that student may be. The charter schools are not limited by one's zip code. We can accept any students from anywhere in the state. We now have 2,200 students who are enrolled in grade pre-K through 8 and 6 and 9 through 12. Our feeling is this, and I'm paraphrasing Frederick Douglass: it's so much easier to build young boys and girls than it is to repair broken men and women. We believe that heartily.
Judge, that's
Foundation,
beautiful, and that comes from the heart. And that's one of the other reasons why we're so happy that you've joined us. Your commitment to the community is outstanding. And we just don't have time to talk about everything that you've done. But I need to do a quick station break. Everyone, you're listening to the Delphin Law Info Show on KPPM 93.5 Lake Charles, Louisiana. We're very proud of our special guest today, the Honorable Retired Judge Judge Gene Thibodeaux, who we are very happy to announce has joined the Delphin Law Firm. If you would like to communicate with Gene about a serious injury case, you can email him, gene@delphinlaw.com. That's GENE@delphinlaw.com. Or you can call him at the office, 337-439-3939. That's 337-439-3939. Mr. Pettis.
And Judge, most people, after they have had the career that Mark kind of touched on, and everybody here knows that, you were chief judge for, many, many, many years. Most people, when they are decidedly done with that, they figure, well, that's enough for my life's work. Let me just retire, chill out, and enjoy, my quote golden years. But you didn't decide to do that. You decided to transition back into the practice of law. So tell our listening audience what led to that decision.
I still have the energy, Ezra, to do something for the community through the practice of law. I'm in good health. I believe in the law. I know the system. I know the system very well. I know the system at the trial level. I know the system at the intermediate appellate court level and at the Supreme Court level. And so why not use that sort of knowledge, that sort of experience in 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 the community? Why not use that sort of advantage, protecting and advocating for folks who traditionally have been marginalized?
And we definitely appreciate that, Judge. And like you said, you're still in good health, and more importantly, man, you're still sharp and you have such a wealth of knowledge. Why not continue to utilize that as long as possible? And I'm sure you'll keep going. And then also, what else would you do, right?
I think we have a moral obligation, Ezra, to use the talent that God has given us, and those talents that have been developed over years. I think we have a moral obligation to use that for the benefit of our community.
That's true. And Judge, so has it been 4 years yet that you have been off the bench?
It's been 4 years this month that I've been on the bench.
Okay. And in those 4 years, I would imagine, being back and getting back into the swing of practice, you've had some interesting cases. I know you did some hurricane work as well, because that kind of coincided, the pandemic and the hurricanes coincided with your retirement. So just tell our audience a little bit about your legal experiences just within the last 4 years.
The last 4 years, Ezra, my experience has been focused almost primarily on personal injury matters here in Lake Charles and really throughout the state. I was also on a team to represent Tillman Fertitta, the owner of Golden Nugget Casinos, and 490 restaurants and business entities around the country. We filed a lawsuit here in Calcasieu Parish, advocating that Mr. Fertitta's businesses had been disrupted because of the government closure orders. During the pandemic, the government issued orders. Local governments, state governments issued orders for businesses to close and for a certain time. And if they were not closed, then their output had to be no more than 50% or 25% the capacity to serve the public. We found an insurance policy which we thought covered that particular incident. Courts around the country had been dismissing these cases because you had to prove physical damage, actual physical damage because of the virus. We couldn't do that. But we found what's called an endorsement to the policy, which allowed us to bring such an action on behalf of Mr. Fertitta. And fortunately, during the first week of trial in December, we were able to settle it. I think the results spoke very well on behalf of our efforts. I cannot disclose what the settlement was because it's confidential, but let me just say that our client is happy.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, Judge, and I think it's probably a combination between your experience and just your years of understanding and learning and being learned in the law, that you can find a lot of different avenues to success if you dig in and read through these insurance policies. I mean, we deal with insurance policies every day in the personal injury world, and like one of my other mentors, Mr. Arthur O'Keefe, always says is, well, the first thing you got to do is read the policy. That's always his advice. He said the first thing you do is read the policy.
Read the policy and be creative. And I think that's why I was so impressed with the Delphin Law Firm. You all have done some creative work, not only in the community, but you all have done creative work on behalf of your clients who have been injured. And that sort of thing excites me.
Yeah, there's more than one way to get a result. And as lawyers, I mean, that's pretty much our job, right? I mean, because the average person can figure something out if it's straightforward, but if there's roadblocks and complexities, then learned lawyers are supposed to be set to task. And Judge, you're definitely a learned lawyer, so we appreciate all your knowledge and insight you bring to the table for us.
I think, Ezra, I know what the courts are looking for. I know what judges are looking for. And I know what juries are looking for. I have read during my years on the Court of Appeal thousands of cases. So I have a feel for the pulse of what these folks are thinking. And I'm bringing that unique perspective to the Delphin Law Firm.
Judge, throughout your career on the bench, I'm sure you've seen just about every lawyer's work in the state of Louisiana. Are all lawyers created equal?
No.
Say more about that, please.
Yeah. Some lawyers are more prepared than others. Some lawyers are more experienced than others. While lawyers have the same potential of being prepared, many lawyers do not advance that particular potential. It depends on the type of preparation. The same preparation that's needed on the court as a judge. You can't just shoot from the hips. You have to do the work that would give your client the advantage in the court, the trial court. You have to make sure that that record in the trial court is protected so that if you appeal to the appeal court, the intermediate court where I sat, then your argument becomes so much stronger than it would have been. But it takes that advanced foresight. You've got to know how to protect your record in the event you're not successful at the trial court. How do you advance your arguments at the intermediate appellate level and at the Supreme Court level? It matters a lot on what goes into the record at the trial court. Trial court is where you actually have the trial itself. You don't have a trial in the appeal court. You've got 20 minutes to convince the judges that your position is the stronger position and is the right position.
Judge, let me see if I can just kind of simplify what you just said. It's one thing to win the case in the trial court. It's another thing to hold on to your verdict at the Court of Appeal in the Louisiana Supreme Court. True?
That's exactly correct. Yes.
And Judge, to that end, you had made mention of the fact that you got 20 minutes to basically sum up what may have taken 5 or 6 or 10 years to get to that point, right? So in doing so, the record is so important. You have to know it like your ABCs. And that is another area that separates. I know you all sit 3-panel judges and you listen to all these lawyers across the state argue. And I would imagine that very quickly, the more prepared party emerges, right?
That is correct. That is correct. And candor is very important at that stage. Your integrity, your personal integrity before the court, your reputation before the court. Judges may not articulate that, but I know that it happens, that if Mark says something versus XYZ lawyer says something, I know that Mark, or I know that Ezra has a solid reputation before the court. Credibility is everything. If I catch you not being very candid in a brief before the court or misrepresenting facts, then I'm going to remember that as a judge. Judges are human. They remember those sorts of things.
And that's a great insight, Judge. And most of the people that we know, throughout the state who are at that level, they're on the bench, whether it's appellate or a district court or even the Supremes, a lot of them will say they already pretty much have their mind made up, per everybody's briefing prior to them getting into the courtroom. And they're looking for you or the advocate rather, the lawyer, to be able to maybe either convince them further of their position or maybe make them take a few steps back from it. But 90% of the decision is already kind of done on a briefing. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. At the many judges at the trial court level are prepared when they step into their courtrooms, but they will allow attorneys to articulate their position to make certain that they haven't missed anything. At the intermediate court level where I was, we had 6 weeks to prepare for oral argument along with our 2 law clerks. So yes, when you go into court, in fact, if you go into court not having an idea of what you're going to decide, you're not prepared. But I typically would tell lawyers, okay, Mark, Mr. Delphin, tell me, this is where I stand as a judge. Tell me where I'm wrong. Correct me, guide me. This is your case. You should know more about it than I do. So tell me that the position that I feel this case is in is not the correct position.
And that's helpful, Judge. I mean, most of the time, when we go in there, we want to argue on top of the brief that we've already submitted, and then give even more information on it. But a lot of times, really, what judges need, I guess, is to fill in the gaps, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Everyone, our special guest today is retired Judge Ulysses Gene Thibodeaux, who just finished a stint of 32 years on the Third Circuit Court of Appeal, who has now joined the Delphin Law Firm and who is going to be handling serious personal injury cases. If you would like to speak to Judge Thibodeaux, send him an email, Gene, Gene, at delphinlaw.com, or call him at the office, 337-439-3939. Judge, let's say we've got someone that's listening to us and they want to hire you on a serious injury case, but they're concerned that they might not be able to pay you in advance. How can you handle that sort of case?
Well, that's easy. Mark, we'll do what's called a contingency fee contract, where if we're not successful, if we don't collect anything, then the client doesn't collect anything. It's our job to make sure that the correct medical attention is given to their injuries. That would bolster their case. We are concerned that we have all the facts to create fault on the other side. That's particularly important. And we don't charge by the hour. That's not what personal injury lawyers do. We charge as a percentage of the recovery that we will get. And in most cases, we're able to negotiate a fee with the medical practitioners, whether they're chiropractors, neurosurgeons, orthopedists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and that sort of thing. Because the clients do not have the money to pay for these medical expenses up front.
In other words, Judge, if we don't win, we don't get paid.
That's correct.
So we got to win.
You got to win. That is great. That's a great incentive to prepare to fight the insurance companies.
Judge, I want to shift gears, and I mentioned to the audience earlier that we were going to talk about some of your memorable cases, and we've already talked about a couple of others. But I have got to guess that when you look back on your career, all the people you've helped and everything that you've done, the case of State versus Emmerich Saunier has got to come to mind. Share with our audience a little bit about the case of State versus Saunier. And let me tell you, I was new in Lake Charles in December of 1982 when I learned that this young black man, Emmerich Saunier, had killed a police officer that shot him over by Boutte's grocery over there across the street from Conbree's funeral home. And everybody at the courthouse and in the legal community thought for sure that Emmerich Saunier was going to get the death penalty. But that did not happen, did it?
No, it did not. It did not. Emmerich Saunier was not, this was an especially heavy burden because he was simply not guilty on a technicality. He was really innocent, which is a difference between being not guilty. If a jury can write not guilty, that means there wasn't sufficient evidence. But Emmerich Saunier was truly innocent. He was an engineering student, a former Marine sharpshooter, and an engineering student at McNeese when, unfortunately, he was engaged in a struggle with the city police officers at Boutte's grocery, and one was unfortunately killed. The state decided to seek the death penalty because the homicide of a police officer in Louisiana is a first-degree murder charge, subjecting you to potential death. Judge Al Gray was my co-counsel. We were able to convince a jury of 12 whites that this young black guy was innocent, not guilty, but actually innocent because of the offense that he was charged with. And how did we do that? It was self-defense. His brother was on the ground. and was being beaten by the cops. The gun became loose. One of the officers, whose name I don't even recall, shot at Emmerich Saunier, grazed his forehead. And Emmerich Saunier, remember, he was a Marine. He was a sharpshooter. He's trained to shoot. Came up with the gun and defended himself. And unfortunately, the young officer who had been on the force for 30 days was killed. One interesting thing about it was the closing argument. A juror called me the day after the verdict, which was October 31st, 1983. Yeah, October 31st, 1983, and said he commended us on our handling of the case. He said, but you made one mistake. I said, what was that? I didn't ask him, well, did you vote guilty? Because the verdict had been unanimous. He said, no, you looked at me during your entire closing argument. You eyeballed me. Okay, he says, and you knew probably that I was a bigot. I am a bigot. I don't like you. I don't like your client. He said, no kidding. But he said, you know what? God told me I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Goodbye.
Yeah, Judge, and I forgot to mention earlier, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Particularly, everybody thought Mr. Saunier was going to get the death penalty, particularly when the jury was selected and they were all white. You and Al Gray were both black. Saunier was black. The prosecutor was white. The judges was white, but still justice prevailed. But that's not the only time that you made justice prevail in a criminal case, Judge. And you've got hundreds of cases. I just one more that I want to talk to you about that I think took remarkable courage on your behalf, which was a big deal back home to us in Natchitoches Parish when it happened. On March 20th of 1996, while you were at the Court of Appeal, you handed down a decision signed off by another judge in the case of State versus Brandy Wiley. And the reason that case is important to me, and I want the audience to know about it, is you threw out 2 manslaughter convictions, and very few judges would have the courage to overturn a jury verdict throwing out 2 manslaughter convictions for a little girl who was only 15 years old at the time of the killing. Can you share with our audience just a little bit about that case, please?
Yeah, this was a young lady who at age 15 absconded with her boyfriend, who was also 15, from Shreveport. They made it to Natchitoches, and they were hungry, they were tired, they were cold. The young man, her partner, knocked on the door of an elderly woman in Natchitoches, asked for a drink of water and to use the telephone, and he had a gun. And he told little Brandy Wiley that I'm going to kill her. She said, no, don't do that. In fact, she was trying to get home to Shreveport because she was pretty much at the end of her road. But her accomplice did kill the lady, did take the gun and tried to discard it and ran away. They were ultimately apprehended, charged with murder, both of them. And ultimately the jury came back with manslaughter. It was appealed to our court. I was the lead judge on that. That is, I was tasked with the chore of actually writing the opinion itself. I did not see where she had the intent to actually kill or inflict great bodily harm on anyone. In fact, she attempted to prevent this from happening by entreating her partner not to do what he did. And I keep a painting in my office. It says just Rua Justitia Fiat Caelum, which is a Latin term, literally translated means let justice be done, though the heavens may fall. You just have to do what you need to do and forget about the public reaction to it. It was not very popular to overturn a conviction, okay, where an elder lady was just cold-bloodedly killed.
Well, and Judge, what's significant also to me about that case The trial judge in that case gave this little girl 50 years, 225 years consecutive
Sheesh.
sentences. And do you realize that even though this happened in 1993, that little girl would still be in prison today had it not been for you and your commitment to justice?
That is correct. It's very difficult to get a pardon on a 50-year sentence here in Louisiana. It's pretty much mandatory that she serves 85% of that.
I know, and that made a significant. Now that was just one person's life. Earlier we talked about tens and literally hundreds of thousands of people's lives that you've affected. But I'm sure that little girl, Brandy Wiley, is never going to forget Judge Gene Thibodeaux, who wrote that very outstanding decision. Mr. Pettis?
And Judge, and to Mark's point, the impact that you were able to have not only on, just these individuals in specific cases, but just overall, I always say, every time we're at some sort of event, to our ladies and gentlemen out there listening, whether it be a legal community event or something else, and if Judge Thibodeaux is receiving an award or some sort of acknowledgement, they always say, well, we can go on and on, but we don't have that kind of time to talk about everything that he's done so far in his 70 plus years. So every time I think about being, lazy or not doing something, I always think, well, because Thibodeau's over 70. I mean, so if he can do it, I need to get up and do it. So that's definitely inspirational.
Yeah, I just celebrated the 15th anniversary of my 60th birthday.
So, Ezra, my next question is for you. With a judge with Judge Thibodeau's level of academic excellence, he's Ivy League educated. He served on a court of appeal. He served on the Louisiana Supreme Court. He's helped people in healthcare. He's helped people in education. He's smart as all get out. How can we go wrong having him as a member of our law firm?
I mean, there's no way and I always, I talk with Mark about this with regularity. I say he's always the elder statesman in the room. So, usually when you have that person, especially in the practice of law, for those, who are out there, our ladies and gentlemen who are laymen, not familiar with the law, it's always important to have somebody in the room, especially when you're younger lawyers, who you can turn to and who can make decisions and maybe calm down, some ideas, and also add some ideas that the young lawyers may not even think of. I mean, Mark and I were gearing up for trial 2 weeks ago, and Mark said something that was pretty common sense, but all of us younger lawyers who were involved in the case didn't even think about it, right? But it's that experience that's so important. So now that we have added an even elder statesman, no offense to your age, Judge. I mean, that's that's not a negative. That's a double positive, in my opinion. And of course, again, to those out there who are not, 100% familiar with the law and the rigors of the practice, when I was in law school, majority of the cases that you would read, that had some sort of a lesson to be learned in them procedurally, especially, and substantively, Judge Thibodeaux was involved in, from the Third Circuit. So, because geographically, the Third Circuit takes up a huge part of the state, even though population-wise is more dense, toward the eastern part of the Mississippi. The Third Circuit takes up geographically a large area, so there's a ton of decisions out of the third, Judge, that you've been involved in, either writing, Judge, or contributing to it. It's more than what I would imagine you could count, because I know I wasn't able to do so.
Let me to augment that, Ezra. Let me give you the benefit of one case that really, I think, highlighted my interest in personal injury law. Courts were, for the death of a parent, courts were awarding $350,000, $500,000. The highest award was $750,000. We had a case out of Alexandria, horrible facts, where a mother and her two kids were on the shoulder of a highway. A car being driven by a young man who was high on drugs ran over the mother, carried her for about a mile on the hood of a car, and exposed all of her innards. I mean, she pretty much exploded there on the highway. Yes, it was a horrible case. And there was only $25,000 insurance, $25,000. And so the case was more geared to an issue than to the amount of money. Our court went en banc, which meant that all 12 judges heard the case. I said, this is a great opportunity to establish the value of a life in the Third Circuit, which has 21 parishes in its jurisdiction. I was writing judge, and I was able to convince the majority of the court that rather than awarding $750,000, which was the highest award at that time, we awarded $2.5 million. Granted, they'll never be recovered because the young man is pretty much judgment proof, and he only had $25,000 of insurance. But that set a precedent for other cases in the future.
There again, Judge, there you go, helping hundreds and thousands of people. And again, we're very proud of you. Judge, we've got about a minute left. Let's give you the last word. What would you like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Many lawyers, Mark and Ezra, who engage in the personal injury field, really do not believe in that. It's a good way of making a very good living and developing a good source of income. I was drawn to your law firm because not only do you do that, but you actually believe in what you do. And when that happens, you put your heart, mind, and soul into the cases that you are working because you personally believe that that is the right thing to do. So that is what attracted me to your law firm. And if I could tell young lawyers, one final ounce of advice would be, listen, be visible in the community. Contribute to the community because you expect that same community to contribute to you. They cannot do that if they don't know of you, if they don't know of your visibility or know of your presence in the community. And we're always here to share our experiences with others. Why have this experience? Why have this knowledge if we can't share it?
That's words of wisdom, Judge. I mean, that, and especially, having someone who is willing to share their information. I mean, I am truly fortunate and very blessed to, over my legal career so far, even though, of course, it's been very short in comparison, but I have had, the ability to be able to walk into Mark's office or walk into Art's office and now walk into your office and be able to, learn pretty much every day. If I don't know something, then I don't have to feel ashamed about asking, because, the consequence of not asking is far graver than just getting your pride hurt and not knowing something. So we appreciate that.
This year marks my 50th year as a lawyer. There are very few things that I haven't seen. There are very few things I haven't heard. There are very few things I haven't experienced in the law.
Judge, a couple of years ago, you received the Charles Hamilton Houston Award from the Louis A. Martinet Society. And what you just said caused me to remember Charles Hamilton Houston's expression. And maybe you could help me just a little bit better. I think it goes something like, the lawyer who does not participate in helping his community is destined to prey upon it. How does that go?
Yeah, to be a predator upon it, I believe, is how it goes. Huh?
So in other words, if we don't help our community, we're not doing any good. We might make some money, but we're not doing it. We're not helping anybody really.
We're just feeding on them without giving back.
There you go, Judge. But Judge, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you, Ezra. Everyone, you've been listening to the Delphin Law Info Show on KPPM 93.5, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Our special guest has been the Honorable Retired Judge Ulysses Gene Thibodeaux, who we are so happy to announce has joined the Delphin Law Firm and who will be handling serious personal injury cases. If you would like to talk to Gene about a case, you're going to see him on the street. You're going to see him at funerals. You're going to see him in weddings. You're going to see him anywhere you go. Talk to him. He's always available to speak to someone. But if you want to talk to him about a case, you can email him, Gene, Gene, at delphinlaw.com, or just call the office, 337-439-3939. We're going to do everything that we can to help you, even if it's a case that we can't, for whatever reason, don't handle. Well, once again, thank you all. We'll see you all right back here next week on the Delphin Law Info Show. And this show will rebroadcast on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our producer, Miss Whitney Washington of KPPM 93.5. See you guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Delphin Law Info Show. Be sure to tune in next time where we will be bringing the light to your issues and concerns.